Donald Trump, those monuments, those Confederate monuments, are symbols of hatred. And many people can say that Robert E. Lee and those men were not racist. But it really doesn't matter, does it? They fought, whatever their reasons were, to enslave an entire pigmentation of people. Therefore, it is time those monuments get placed in museums or cemeteries, or that they are destroyed. Why should they be destroyed, you might ask? They are symbols of hate and hatred. We don't have, in America, we don't have symbols of Mussolini, Saddam Hussein. We don't have Osama bin Laden. We don't have Hitler. We don't have Stalin. We don't have Assad. We don't have Gaddafi. We don't have any dictators and mass murderers and evil men, or women for that matter. Yet, the Confederacy, because they were supposed fellow Americans, because they called themselves co-Americans or Confederates, somehow we dismiss it. We say these men were not racist. We say these men fought for states' rights or what they believed in. The trouble is, what did they believe in? Does states' rights mean the right to enslave another human being? Did states' rights mean the right to rape and kill women and men and whip them and treat them worse than animals or equally to some animals, the way people treat them? Were they okay with that because, well, it was states' rights? No, I will not accept that Robert E. Lee was not racist. I will not accept that he was not. He may not have felt that he was. He may have been an honorable man for the most part. Many of the people in the Confederacy may have had honorable aspects. But the minute you fight to enslave anyone, everything else about you, good intentions, this civility, anything, even though Lincoln even called the former Confederates brothers, Lincoln, on this matter, Lincoln was wrong. I can be no brother to those who would enslave another. I can be no brother to those who would kill someone based on their race, their color, their pigmentation, their sexual orientation, their lack of income, or because of it. For any reason. That is hatred. That is racism. That is sexism, xenophobia, whatever you want to call it. We must not base how we judge a human being on what they look like, how they speak, where they come from. We must not judge a human being on anything other than how that human being is, acts, and cares, and whether they have compassion. To the question in the matter of, was Robert E. Lee a racist? I will ask you this. Did he enforce slavery? If he found any slaves, did he return them to the slave owners? Did he kill them in some cases? Was it not true that when the Confederates many times fought against the black troops or the colored troops, that they killed them even when they gave up? No, sir. No, ma'am. There can be no question. Every Confederate that ever fought was fighting for slavery in addition to whatever they believed in. Maybe they felt they were fighting for their state. Maybe they felt they were fighting for their home. Indeed, they may have been in some ways. But by joining a movement or an army that was also keeping slavery, calling people not even human, no. You don't get off. You don't get a dismissal. I hope that Robert E. Lee and every Confederate that ever fought, I hope they asked for forgiveness and repented. those who believe in a higher power. Or I hope that they ask the universe when they expire for forgiveness or explain their actions. But the fact is, they fought to keep racism, to keep women and men in slavery and in bondage. They fought to kill. They fought to separate. They can claim it was states' rights or whatever they want, or their economy, whatever they want. But if your economy is based on the enslavement of another human being, then what you are is worse than a racist. You are indeed a murderer. You are a murderer in spirit. You are a murderer many times, literally. You know, it wasn't just African Americans or Africans. There were also white slaves and others. But somehow, anyone who wasn't white, and mainly, principally, Africans that were colored or black, and I don't like to make those ridiculous statements. They're human beings. They are my brothers. They are my sisters. They are your brothers and sisters, whether you like it or not. Now, the fact is, they enslaved and they murdered and they raped and they tortured. So we do not have any reason to truly keep any of these monuments in a graveyard, in a museum. The battle flags should all be burned. It's not that we should erase history. No, it should be documented. It should be spoken about. It should be taught in schools. But it should not be glorified. All that we should glorify is God. All that we should glorify is the fact that the Union was saved, even though in reality it was not. In reality, we have voter suppression, intimidation, and many other things, once again, principally affecting the poor and the minorities and black Americans. It's never stopped, not from day one. I am absolutely committed to using my voice until we make massive changes in America. I am committed, and if anybody that sees this knows of any organizations who would like someone to speak, who has 13 years under their belt as a talk show host, as a 13-year veteran talk show host, I would be glad to speak at your rally. I would need you to provide me the transportation and obviously lodgings and food. But if you can come close to my city, then I will do my best. But we cannot yield and say, well, they weren't racist. Yes, they were. They enslaved people. They may have been theoretically against it, or they may have been against slavery. But if they were against it, yet they fought to keep it, then everything they claimed, maybe even in their heart they thought they were, it's nullified. It's gone. You cannot fight to keep people subjugated, tortured, murdered, and everything else and say that you are not prejudiced. You are. Now, to the spirits of every Civil War Confederate or anyone that fought or supported or sympathized for the Confederacy, or even today, wish it could come back, I ask you to look deep into your soul. And if you believe in a God, ask God for forgiveness and change the way you are. There is not a human on earth that should be treated like the way many are. We should not profile, and many officers have killed and murdered black Americans recently. We should not stand for this. Our Congress should not only create new laws, but when an officer murders anyone, they should automatically face massive prison time. Now, That is not to condemn all officers of the law. Of course not. But it is to say this. If you protect someone that you know is a bad or racist, sexist, xenophobia, homophobia officer, and you know that they're bad news, and you don't say anything, you don't speak up because of the thin blue line, well then, ma'am, sir, guess what? That makes you by default an accomplice, and i.e. a racist yourself. You may not feel that you are. You might love people. But your actions, or in this case inactions, create a vehicle and able to enable possible murderers. Certainly, they don't do you any justice. Now, ironically, I respect officers of the law. I respect the law. But as we see in the news, all these poor innocent people, or maybe they weren't so innocent all the time, people do get mad when they get pulled over. Nobody's perfect. You're not. By no means are you perfect, because I know I'm not either. But this has to stop. And we must say the thin blue line must leave. Because every good officer out there now has a tarnished reputation in certain communities, and rightly so. I have a son that is a black American. Every time he goes anywhere, I am concerned about him. It's not the way it's supposed to be in America. In many ways, the Confederacy is thriving. We don't need any monuments. The Republican Party and their actions are enabling white nationalists and everybody else that's like that. We gerrymander. We hurt the poor even more, their policies in D.C. There's so much that we could speak about. But getting back to the beginning of this, Robert E. Lee and every Confederate, whether they were forced or not to fight, whether they were fighting for states' rights or whatever their reasons, they were fighting to keep slavery in place. The murder, the lynching, the raping, the separation, all in place. They, sir, they, ma'am, were a racist. And I will not allow you, myself, or the world to close our eyes to the truth. They were terrorists. They were racist. You can even, I would argue, the entire Confederacy was a whole nation of terrorists. Anyone in that army should have been charged for terrorism and being traitors to the United States of America. I will not placate to any of you. I love you, but I'm not going to pretty up what is ugly. And every one of those symbols need to be either torn down throughout the entire United States or possibly put into a museum. The flags, the statues, everything. That's my take on it. You don't agree with me? Hey, I'll tell you what. Why don't you email me? Go ahead. lbiz22h@gmail.com. It is what it is. They were racist.